The house felt unusually quiet that Friday night, almost unnervingly so. Emily had left earlier that morning to spend the weekend with her sister, leaving me in charge of the place. Normally, I welcomed the silence, but tonight wasn't exactly normal. She had asked me for a small favor before she left. "Could you make sure Liam has a place to stay? He'll be in town overnight." I had agreed without thinking. Liam was her nephew, after all, and I'd known him since he was a kid. Nothing about that request should have made me nervous. And yet, as I stood in the kitchen preparing dinner for two, I caught myself wondering how different he might be since I last saw him. When the knock came, I opened the door expecting the lanky teenager I remembered. Instead, standing there was someone else entirely. Liam wasn't a boy anymore. He was taller, leaner, with that kind of effortless charm people in their 20s carry, without realizing it. He smiled, lifting his small overnight bag. "Hey, Uncle David," he said casually, though the word uncle sounded almost teasing on his lips. I let him in, trying to ignore the small jolt in my chest. He tossed his bag down by the couch and made himself at home, chatting easily as I finished cooking. We sat at the table and ate pasta with wine I had opened just to make the evening feel less ordinary. Conversation flowed smoothly. Family updates, old memories, his stories about college life. But somewhere between the second glass of wine and his laugh echoing in the kitchen, I realized I was watching him more closely than I should have been. His smile lingered in my head longer than it should. After dinner, we moved to the living room. He sprawled out on the couch like he owned it, phone in hand, bare feet tucked under him. I sat in the chair across from him, pretending to scroll through my own phone, though I wasn't seeing anything on the screen. I was too aware how the lamplight softened his features, how easily he carried himself. At one point, he looked up and caught me glancing. Instead of being awkward, he grinned. "You look bored," he teased. "Want to watch something?" We flipped through channels until we landed on some forgettable movie. I barely registered the plot. I was focused on how close his legs were stretched across the couch, how his arm rested casually against the back cushion. Every so often, his knee brushed mine when he shifted, and each accidental touch sent a quiet spark running through me. I reminded myself again and again, he's Emily's nephew. This is family. But the thought only made the pull feel more dangerous, like standing too close to the edge of a cliff. Halfway through the movie, he pulled his shirt off without ceremony, tossing it aside with a laugh about the house being too warm. I tried to keep my eyes on the screen, but they betrayed me, darting toward him when he wasn't looking. He caught me once, and though I quickly looked away, I could feel his grin, smug and knowing. "I forgot how quiet this house gets at night," he said suddenly, breaking the silence. "Feels too big with just two people in it." He leaned back, stretching, almost lonely. His words weren't loaded, not exactly, but the tone left room for something more. I cleared my throat, forcing a laugh. "That's why Emily keeps the TV running even when she's not paying attention to it." "Smart woman," he said, smirking. Then, after a pause, "You know, if it's weird for me to crash on the couch, I can take the guest room. Or," he let the word hang for a moment, playful, "we could just hang out until we're both tired. Easier than pretending we're not wide awake." I agreed too quickly, eager to disguise the nervous energy building inside me. We stayed up talking, trading small stories. He had a way of leaning in when he listened, of letting silences stretch just long enough to feel charged. Every laugh, every brush of his arm against mine, every glance that lingered a second too long added to the invisible weight pressing down on the room. As the night crept past midnight, I found myself studying him again, the slope of his shoulders, the way his hair fell carelessly into his eyes. A part of me screamed to excuse myself, to go upstairs, to leave him there on the couch and lock the door behind me. But instead, when he casually suggested the guest bed might be easier than the couch, I nodded, my voice low, my throat dry. I showed him the room, tried to make my movements brisk and neutral, but my pulse betrayed me, pounding in my ears. He dropped onto the bed with a sigh, thanking me as though this was nothing unusual. But as I stepped back, his eyes flicked up to mine, holding them for a second longer than necessary. That single look burned into me as I closed the door behind him. Upstairs, lie in my own bed, I stared at the ceiling, restless and uneasy. No matter how hard I tried, I couldn't silence the thought. Tonight was already different, and tomorrow might not look the same again. I lay in bed for what felt like hours, listening to the stillness of the house. Sleep wouldn't come, no matter how many times I shifted positions. Every time I closed my eyes, images of Liam replayed against the darkness. His grin, his bare chest as he sprawled across the couch, the way his eyes had lingered on mine when I showed him the guest room. It was innocent. Had to be. Yet my body refused to treat it that way. Finally, I gave up. Slipping out from under the sheets, I padded quietly down the hall, telling myself I was just getting a glass of water. But when I passed the guest room, I noticed the door wasn't shut all the way. It hung slightly open, spilling a narrow strip of light into the hall. My pulse jumped. I should have kept walking. I should have gone straight to the kitchen. But instead, I glanced inside. Liam was still awake, propped up against the pillows, his phone in hand. The thin glow of the screen lit his face and chest. He had pushed the blankets down around his waist. His lean frame stretched out lazily across the bed. When he looked up and saw me, he didn't seem startled. Instead, he smiled faintly. "Can't sleep either?" he asked, his voice low, as though he'd been expecting me. I froze in the doorway, every instinct telling me to retreat. But his gaze held me there. He patted the empty space beside him. "Come sit for a bit. Maybe it'll help." The words were simple, harmless, yet they carried a weight that made my throat dry. Against better judgment, I stepped inside, closing the door softly behind me. The bed dipped slightly as I sat down on the edge, pretending to look casual while my heart hammered inside my chest. We talked at first, light conversation, the kind that could belong to any two people unable to sleep. He told me about his classes, about frustrations with his parents, about how suffocating it sometimes felt to be the golden boy of the family. "Everyone thinks they know who I am," he murmured, turning his phone off and setting it aside. "But they don't. Not really." Something in his tone made me glance at him. His eyes caught mine, steady, searching. "You're different, though," he added quietly. "You don't judge me. I feel like I can actually breathe around you." The words sank into me like a hook. I should have deflected, should have brushed it off with a joke. Instead, I just nodded, my hand resting on the bed between us. When his fingers brushed mine, deliberately this time, I didn't move. The touch was light, tentative, yet ignited something I couldn't smother. "Liam," I whispered, half warning, half plea. He leaned closer. "It's okay," he said softly, almost daring me. I pulled my hand back, shaking my head. "This is wrong. You know it is." The words left my mouth, but they sounded weak, hollow, as if even I didn't believe them. Silence stretched between us, heavy and charged. He watched me, eyes steady, and then, before I could think, he leaned in. His lips brushed mine, feather-light, testing. My body went rigid, every muscle torn between resistance and surrender. I should have stopped him. I should have pushed away. Instead, I froze, breath caught in my chest. Then, with a shudder, I gave in. The kiss deepened, hesitant at first, then desperate, as though years of denial had broken loose all at once. My mind screamed with guilt, with images of Emily, with every reason this should never happen. But my body betrayed me, responding to his touch as if it had been waiting for it all along. His hand slid to the back of my neck, pulling me closer, and I let him. The world outside that room disappeared. I murmured her name once, Emily, but the sound dissolved into his mouth as he kissed me harder. He didn't flinch, didn't let go, and I couldn't stop. Every boundary I had clung to crumbled beneath the heat of his body against mine. What began as hesitation soon blurred into something reckless, unstoppable. The weight of secrecy only made it more intoxicating. Each kiss, each touch was both a sin and a surrender, something forbidden that I craved more with every passing second. By the time the night had unraveled completely, I wasn't thinking of right or wrong anymore. I wasn't thinking of tomorrow or Emily or consequences. There was only him, only us, only the electric reality of what we had crossed into. When it was finally over, I lay beside him, breathless and trembling, staring at the ceiling as the truth crashed back into me. This wasn't supposed to happen. It couldn't have happened. And yet it had. Beside me, Liam reached for my hand again, twining our fingers together as if it were the most natural thing in the world. I wanted to pull away. Instead, I let it happen. The night was far from over. Morning crept in too quickly. Thin slivers of sunlight pushed through the blinds, painting faint lines across the room. My eyes opened slowly, though part of me wished they hadn't. For a brief, hazy second, I forgot where I was, forgot what had happened. Then the warmth beside me stirred, and memory came rushing back like a wave that threatened to drag me under. Liam was still asleep, his breathing steady, his body sprawled comfortably across the sheets. He looked peaceful, almost innocent. Nothing about his expression revealed the weight of what we had done. But for me, the silence in the room was deafening. My heart thudded with panic. Carefully, I slid out from under the covers, my movements cautious as though any sudden shift might wake him. I stood for a moment, staring down at him, torn between tenderness and fear. I wanted to touch his shoulder, to memorize the way the morning light caught on his skin. But guilt anchored me in place. Instead, I turned and slipped quietly into the hall. In the kitchen, I poured myself coffee with shaking hands, staring into the dark surface as though it could provide answers. My chest felt heavy, my throat dry. I told myself it was just a mistake, something that happened in the blur of late hours and poor judgment. But deep down, I knew it wasn't that simple. I hadn't just slipped, I had wanted it. The sound of footsteps broke my spiral. Liam appeared in the doorway, shirtless, hair messy from sleep. He grinned lazily when our eyes met. "Morning," he said, as if this were any ordinary day. I tried to compose myself, forcing a neutral tone. "Morning. Coffee?" "Sure." He slid into a chair at the table, stretching like a cat. Watching him sit there so casually only twisted the knot in my chest tighter. I poured him a mug, placing it in front of him without meeting his eyes. He took a sip, then leaned back, studying me. "You look like you've seen a ghost." I forced a laugh that sounded thin even to my own ears. "Didn't sleep well." He tilted his head. "Because of last night?" The words landed sharp. I froze, my hands tightening around my own mug. "We shouldn't talk about it," I muttered, staring at the counter. He didn't answer right away. Then, softly, he asked, "Do you regret it?" I swallowed hard, the weight of the question pressing down on me. Did I regret it? My body screamed no, remembering every detail too vividly. My conscience screamed yes, knowing the betrayal ran deeper than anything I could justify. I couldn't bring myself to answer. Liam leaned forward, resting his elbows on the table. His tone was calm, almost reassuring. "You don't have to say it. I already know." Silence stretched between us, thick with everything unsaid. When my phone buzzed on the counter, I nearly jumped. Emily's name lit up the screen. My stomach lurched. I hesitated before answering, forcing my voice into something steady. "Hey, honey." Her voice carried warmth, casual and unsuspecting. She asked about the house, about dinner, about whether Liam had settled in fine. I answered with practiced ease. Each lie smooth on the surface but jagged underneath. Liam watched me the whole time, sipping his coffee, a faint smirk tugging at his lips. When I hung up, I let out a shaky breath. He raised an eyebrow. "She doesn't suspect a thing," he said, almost teasing. "That's not funny." I snapped, sharper than I meant to. His expression softened. "I'm not trying to make light of it. I just don't want you to spiral. What happened last night, it doesn't have to ruin anything. It can stay between us." The words should have been comforting, but they weren't. They were dangerous. Because hidden in them was a suggestion that this could happen again. That secrecy made it possible. My pulse quickened at the thought, part dread, part something darker. "I can't," I whispered, more to myself than to him. "This can't happen again." He didn't argue. He only looked at me, eyes steady, unreadable. Then he stood, brushing past me on his way to the shower. His shoulder grazed mine, deliberate, lingering just enough to make me shiver. Alone again in the kitchen, I sank into a chair, head in my hands. One night, That's all it had taken to unravel the quiet certainty of my life. One night to turn family into temptation, loyalty into betrayal, guilt into desire. The smell of coffee hung heavy in the air, mingling with the echoes of last night that I couldn't shake. No matter how hard I tried, I knew I couldn't erase it. Liam's voice, his touch, the look in his eyes, they were burned into me. When Emily returned, nothing would look different on the surface. I would smile, hug her, act like the husband she believed I was. But inside, I knew everything had shifted. Because even if Liam never spoke a word, even if no one else ever found out, the truth lived here now, between him and me, in the quiet space where guilt and desire tangled together, impossible to separate. And I knew, with a sinking certainty, that no matter how hard I tried, I would never look at him or at myself the same way again.